Now we are going to start with the greenhouse effect. You know, there are many gases, again as we discussed in the air pollution, that the major consequence of the air pollution is again a greenhouse effect also. So there are many gases like CO2, CFC, ammonia, they are actually causing the greenhouse effect. So we are going to discuss in this topic that what actually is a greenhouse effect. See, we know that like we have sun here, we know that sun is sending radiations on the earth's surface. So out of the whole radiation, if you talk about 100% radiation, so out of that 66% is sent back, sorry, 66 is absorbed and 34% is radiated back. So the radiations which come from the sun actually consist of three kinds of waves. One is the infrared, other is the visible region, third is the ultraviolet. They are of longer wavelength, they are of wavelength 400 to 700 nanometer, and they have wavelength less than 400. So they are less than 400 to 700, they are more than 700 nanometer. So these radiations actually comes from the earth. So we know that when they, like suppose this is my land, this is my land. So there are so many gaseous molecules we know that is actually present in the earth. So out of that we are particularly talking about CO2, CFC and ammonia, and particularly of CO2, the most important, because it is the main greenhouse gas. So you know that, so when these kind of radiations pass, CO2 actually allow these radiations to pass through it. Firstly, it allows these radiations to pass through it. So when these radiations fall on this earth's surface, they are like if you talk about UV and visible light, they get absorbed. They get absorbed. And the one which is of the larger wavelength, particularly I am talking about the infrared one, they get reflected back. I will draw it with the red one. They get reflected back. So when they get reflected back, so there are like when they get reflected back, their wavelength again increase, they gets more increase. So these CO2 molecules allow these radiations to enter in, but when they enter it, they continue, they undergo several reflections, and their wavelength again increases up to a certain level. And when it gets increased, it doesn't allow these radiations to pass again from it. So that means these radiations get trapped in these molecules. And as we know that infrared radiations cause heating effect, so obviously when they will get trapped in these CO2 molecules which are present in the atmosphere, so they will just increase the temperature of the earth, because they are something which cause an heating effect, and when they get trapped in the atmosphere, so that means they are increasing the temperature of the atmosphere. So this is what is so that means when they get trapped, we say they cause global warming. They just affect the temperature of the earth, right? So they just cause the global warming. So I think you got it. Again, I am just going to explain you again. See, there are many radiations which are coming from the earth. Out of that, maximum are absorbed, but some are reflected back. And the one which is reflected back is mainly of the larger wavelength rays, that is the infrared radiations. Infrared radiations are actually cause of the heating effect. So when they pass back, see when they were coming, so this CO2 molecule, they were of such wavelength that this CO2 was allowing them to pass through it. But after reflection, their wavelength increased beyond a certain limit. And that radiations with that limit of wavelength, these molecules will allow to enter, but after entering, they will not allow them to escape out. So they will somehow get trapped inside, and when they get trapped inside, as their major cause of heating effect, so that means they will raise the temperature of the earth, and that is something called as global warming. So this is what is the greenhouse effect. So the gases, as I told you, that which can trap actually these infrared radiations are CFCs, ammonia like, argon also. They also do it, but if we talk about the major gas, which is the major cause of the greenhouse effect, that is the CO2, carbon dioxide. And you know that the greenhouse effect will actually is going to cause a harmful effect. Like, see, if we talk about CO2 is not harmful for us, but when it it exceeds a certain limit, it becomes a pollutant, because there it is just increasing the greenhouse effect, and it is just affecting the climate of the earth. And when the climate of the earth is affected, so we are going to affect, because see, there will be less rainfall in the temperate areas and there will be more rainfall in the dried areas of the world. This kind of thing can be there. Second, it will just increase the sea level, and when the sea level will increase, it will obviously cause the floods and all. And you know that what is the reason for the increase in the sea level? It is the melting of the polar ice caps and all, because when the temperature will rise, ice caps will melt or glaciers will melt, they will just flow into the sea level will rise, and when the sea level will rise, it can cause the floods, tsunamis and all. This kind of thing can be there. And moreover, you know that when the CO2 will increase beyond a certain limit in the atmosphere, so that means the plants are forced to take up CO2 at faster rate. So obviously they are going to affect their growth also. So that means greenhouse effect can actually disturb our ecological balance. It can actually disturb everything, and you can say that it is again a harmful effect or a harmful consequence of the air pollution. So we should take preventive measures so that these type of gases, which are greenhouse gases mainly, they do not exceed a certain limit, because when they will exceed a certain limit, they will become pollutant, and as you have seen that what kind of disaster they can create actually, right? So we need to take care of these gases also. This is a greenhouse effect.